David,
Hello.
sorry, one quick question.
No problem.
Scale sets are only for CPU spikes, right? Not for anything else.
Oh no, there's there's a lot that you can use when you want to do the configuration. So I'm just using CPU because it's kind of like the easiest to really demo now. But you could go as far as using like a particular log information.
Right. Okay.
You could tie that in, man. You've seen some really interesting architectures. You could tie that in with, so if you're using something like Azure Service Bus, for example, like if there's a message in a service bus queue, automatically trigger this. If there's a webhook message, automatically trigger this. So you could use a lot of things to to be the trigger for the scale out or the scale in. So if I go, so one of the things that you notice is that my VM skill set has completed deployment now. If I refresh this, you can see everything is all good. If I go under virtual machines, because this can confuse certain people sometimes, is where's my virtual machine that's deployed? I can't see my virtual machine here. That's because any virtual machine that VM skill set deploys, you're not going to find under virtual machines here. You're going to find under the VM skill set service. So whenever VM skill set deploys virtual machines, you won't see them on this list. You have to go under all services. And then I'm going to type in skill sets. And in order to keep it on the left hand side, I can tick the star, and that's going to bring it on the left hand side. So I can drag it up under virtual machines, click on that. And here I can see my virtual machine skill set. And if I click on that, and on the instances is where I'll see the virtual machine. You can see that it's the virtual machine that it created that's running as part of this. So that's where I can see the virtual machines that it's created that's running. And again, let's actually go test this out because hey, I've just deployed this. It has a public IP address here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that public IP address. I've not done anything after doing this. I'm just going to go to HTTP, go to that, and that takes me straight to IIS, which means everything is all good, it's working. So it automatically, so let's go back to the whiteboard and what we've done so far. So it automatically, let's separate these out to avoid all the clutter. So VM skill set automatically deployed my image. It automatically has the load balancer, and this registered to the load balancer automatically. And that's ready, and I can already come from the internet and I can access this and everything is looking good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on VM skill sets and the service itself, and I'm going to go configure some scaling rules. So by the way, let me show you manual scaling first. So if I don't configure auto scaling, I can do a manual scaling. But look at how easy this is, right? It's as easy as dragging a slider. So rather than me in the past, even if you're not going to use auto scaling, VM skill set is still smart for something that needs to scale. Because in the past, if I wanted to scale, I need to provision the virtual machine. I need to register it to the load balancer and do all that stuff. And then if the load goes away, I need to take the virtual machine away. I need to go to register it from the load balancer, change my configuration, remove all that stuff. But now, if I want to scale it up, I just go, yeah, add, make them 12 instances. The load has gone away. I can just go back and say, yeah, make them back to 3 instances, save, and it's going to do all that. But that's manual scaling. But what we want to do is we want to actually enable auto scaling to do something much more interesting. So what I'll do is I'll go under notify, and sorry, let's go under configure, and I'll go enable auto scaling. Actually, let's discard all the changes that I've made so far. Yeah, good. Let's go configure, and I'll go enable auto scale. So enable auto scale, that's the auto scale setting name, that's the resource group. So this is what I was talking. So scale based on the metric, scale to a specific instance count. So it's gonna go scale based on the metric. And here's where I can add my rule. And current metric source. So you can see like all the different things. So this is what I was talking about. Look at the flexibility. It's not just based on current resource, which I can use like my virtual machine and my CPU and all the other stuff. I can do that based on a storage queue, based on service bus queue, based on an event on another resource in Azure. Or if this resource, if this event or this metric comes in on this particular resource, trigger a scale out event or a scaling event. So I can do that. There's a lot of flexibility. But I'll just leave that as current resource for now. and I'll say average, which is virtual machine percentage CPU. Like I'll just leave it at that. And this is where I can specify my values. If the percentage CPU is greater than 70%, and this is where you saw what I was talking about, where you can now specify the duration, over the duration of how many minutes. So you can specify over 5 minutes. For this one, I will try to specify the minimum, which is 5 minutes, because I don't want to wait a long time before I see my scale event. So I'll set that to minimum of over 5 minutes. Increase the count by 1, and then cool down, and then I go hard, and then that's gonna add my scale rule. But that is for my scale out event. But what I can do also is I can add another rule, which will be my scale in event. So if I go back to this, I can say if it's less than 50%, so rather than increase the count, I'm gonna decrease the count by 1 instance if it's less than 50%. And if I go to add that,
Is the cooldown where it won't do anything in between that time, so
yeah,
it's not constantly going up and down if it's like right under
exactly.
pressure.
That's the point. So you're talking about, if I go back here, you're talking about these settings over here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So to avoid a situation where if something is just spiky, right? So it's not as if it's just gonna spike for like 1 minute and then all of a sudden we start adding one new instance and then the load goes away, right? We don't want that. Or something like the load drops down and then we start taking away instances, but then the load spikes back up, and then we need to start adding instances while we're deprovisioning one. Does that make sense? So give it some time to actually make sure that there's a view spike that's gonna, if there's spike up or spike going down, that's gonna persist over a period of time, so that it's not constantly trying to jump up and down. So scale out, scale back in, and then instance limit. So here's where I can specify my instance limit. My default, the one that's constantly running, starts from minimum of this one, scale up to a maximum of 5 instances. I can do that. So in other words, that's if I don't want it to go beyond that. And one come, and I'll do something else while we're waiting on this to complete. So what I want to do is, let me show you VM scale set. If I want to connect to my machines, how I could do that. So it creates a load balancer and it manages the load balancer. If I go to the load balancer that VM scale set created, you can see that VM scale set has an inbound natural automatically configured, and I could disable this if I wanted to, but it has an inbound natural automatically configured to NAT. So if I click on the first one, that is anything that goes to the load balancer IP address port 50,001 gets sent to RDP on my backend server. And if it's Linux, it gets sent to SSH, which is port 22. So by default, but I can disable that option if I don't want the machines to be reachable that way. And for many people, they don't want that. So you can disable that. If you're deploying VM scale set using PowerShell or using CLI, you can disable that at the point of deployment. But if not, you can just delete these rules. So if I go back to this one, so if I go to this public IP address of this load balancer on port 50,001, it will take me to an RDP session of the first machine. And if I go to port 50,002, it will take me to the next one, 50,003, the next one, and on and on. So it automatically configures that. So what I would do is, that's the IP address. Let me go connect to the first instance. So let's go, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. And I'll put colon 50001. Connect. And put in the username that I specified during deployment and the password, and it's going to connect me to the first instance that's running in the VM scale set. And while it's doing that, let's verify the status of this is registered. Let's go save this now, and that should be good. So now scale out when average CPU 70%, scale back in when CPU drops to 50%. So that's the, and then I can configure a notification. I can say email administrator, so it's gonna email my account, my email address because I'm an administrator. Or I can even add additional emails to email, to send an email to. So do architect19 at outlook.com. I can even use that to trigger a webhook, maybe that's going to my IT service management system or something. Save that, and that should be good. So now I've configured auto scaling on that. Let's go test it out. So the way I'm going to test it out is I'm going to go to this machine. This is the first instance of this machine, and I'm going to open heavy load, and I'm going to add some stress to the machine. Come on. There we go. And I don't want to stress the, let's remove memory, let's remove disk, I only want CPU, and I may get an error, but that's fine.
Did we successfully register
The insights? Yes, it did. So that's registered.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to, this one?
Yes.
Yes, yes, it did. No problem. So now it's stressing. If I go to check task manager, this machine CPU should be 99% now, so that's good. That should eventually filter into VM skill set. If I go back to on the instances, I can say I have two instances running. What I'll do, for 1 minute, let me close the window. So what I'll also do is I'll also go to the second instance, which will be 50,002, and I'll also go trigger a load on that. So let's get the IP address 50,002 and connect. Our choices. Yes. And it's gonna take me into the second instance, get rid of that, start, close that. Let's verify that that's taking effect. CPU, all good. So essentially now we just wait, because what will happen is eventually we'll see that it's going to begin to filter in that the CPU is going crazy. So if I go to select percentage CPU, and if I change that to not last 24 hours, the last 30 minutes, apply that, and let's see. So you're gonna begin to see this. So every 1 minute, so the next 1 minute, you're gonna see that when it reads the metric, it's gonna read higher, and then eventually it's gonna go. I've got to trigger an instance. Any question regarding skill set at all? And so, for example, if I go back to the Azure portal over here, and if I go on the scaling, I can look at scaling events. I can look at the history, right, of the scaling events that has happened over the past 7 days and stuff like that. The thing to note, again, this is just part of like the Azure monitoring topic and stuff like that, is that by default, all this information are only kept for 93 days. So if you want them to be kept for longer than that, you need to have a way. But again, that's part of like monitoring. You need to have a way of moving, and this not just this. This is a lot of monitoring. Native capabilities that you get in Azure are only kept for 93 days by default, and after that, that's gone. So if you want to go, if you want to be able to go beyond that, you need to have a mechanism of moving your log somewhere else, or moving the information somewhere else where you can archive them or see the history beyond that. But yeah, so on the run history, you see the history of any scaling events that has happened. Yeah, I can begin to see. So I'm not sure if you can see my screen, but you can see that now that I'm looking at metrics in VM skill sets, now it's reading 90%. So now my scaling will begin to kick in at some point very soon.
And sorry, that was set to monitor every how many minutes?
So I set the so I don't set the minute so
Oh,
the
okay.
yeah. So what I did was I set the evaluation period. So I said evaluate over a period of 5 minutes,
Sure.
which is the
Okay.
least that I could go to. But the
Right.
metric itself that it's using this
Yeah.
percentage CPU
Percentage
metric,
CPU. Yeah.
which is sent to Azure every 1 minute.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problems. And if you can see my screen, sorry to interrupt you, but can you see that it's scaling now, right? So you can see that
Yeah.
it's beginning to scale. And if I go to check my email, I just got an email that says,
Right.
hey, hello, David, I'm increasing the capacity because the load is increasing and I'm beginning to add to that. So that's now taking effect now and it's beginning to create an instance. And I'll ask you a question on this later because you can see that it's creating 2 rather than 1.